Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm Krystl Black, the SVP of Marketing at Cove, and I'm excited to be here today with our co-founders, Sandeep Ahuja and Patrick Chopson, to talk about Cove Architecture, our new full-service architecture practice that combines advanced technology with hands-on expertise to design buildings that meet the pace, scale, and priorities of today's built environment. Today, we're going to talk about why we launched the practice, what makes it different, and how we're rethinking architecture for today's needs. We'll save a few minutes at the end for audience questions, so feel free to add anything to the chat, and we'll select a few to close out our session today. But let's go ahead and get started with the easy stuff about why Cove Architecture. So for both of you, what sparked the launch of Cove Architecture?
So for me, it was very much focused around the industry as it currently stands. I'm from the industry. I've been in the industry for the last 15 years. And I will say that there's so much I love about architecture and there's so much I do not. The things I do not like are the fact that it's so normal for folks to work 60-hour weeks. It's so normal for people to be working on Christmas Eve to deliver their project because the workflows are so inefficient. And I really think that with the goal and ambition to bring automation, technology, AI to the world of architecture, to bring back, well, it's never existed, but maybe in a time before I existed, to bring back work-life balance or to just bring work-life balance, which never existed, is the thing that gets me most excited.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm most concerned about building a culture of design excellence and how we can use technology to get closer to design buildings that are sustainable, low carbon buildings by default. And with the rise of AI, if someone asked me like, hey, last year, could an AI architecture firm be a thing? The answer was technically no. Over the last 4 to 6 months, the answer has become yes, for several reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into. But
We will.
But I'm really, really excited to just be able to maybe realize the vision of Nicholas Negroponte from the 1970s of the architecture machine, some of the ideas of Christopher Alexander from pattern language, and actually build that into a really true modern practice that kind of takes advantage of the new tech to allow us to deliver a higher design level for projects. So I think that's really exciting.
Awesome. And so for Sandeep, folks may know that you've helped build a software company when we launched Cove Tool back in 2017. Now as Cove, now we're launching an architecture practice. So how does one thing lead to the other?
I think for me, it all kind of brings back the idea of technology, automation, and enablement. That is the thread that pulls it all together for the architecture, engineering, construction space. So we're focused on this space, we're focused on technology, we're focused on automation. The other thread that's very near and dear to my heart is very much that of reducing the global carbon emissions, which being more involved in the product selection, being more involved in making sure that design excellence, as Patrick mentioned, which to me, as a sustainability expert, definitely translates to great daylight, great views, low carbon materials. I think that passion and that thread is the one that connects it all.
So let's talk a little bit about what makes Cove Architecture different. Patrick, you've worked on a number of different buildings in your career. How does Cove Architecture approach design differently from, say, traditional firms?
Yeah, I think the number one difference is that there's like a saying that only God can watch all the sparrows. There's like, you can't keep track of all the things you got to do. And to a certain extent, we spend a lot of time as architects basically coordinating information, basically codes, standards, things like that. We don't spend enough time being able to do the things that we want to do, which is to design the building and make it really beautiful and interesting. Also, projects take a long time to get done. And the reason for that oftentimes is that there'll be some mistake or something that we'll miss. We have to go back and revise it. Or even if we deliver the best building and everything's fully coordinated, it's designed and done the right way, you still get to the end and then the contractor says, oh, this is 20% over our budget. We got to go back and redesign everything. So I think like those types of things really come together, I think, to say, how are we going to do it different? We're going to avoid some of those problems. We're going to have things that are more coordinated. And with nowadays, with so many principals retiring, we need more and more ways that we can like kind of elevate the understanding of design principles, project execution, be able to track those things and leverage technology to help us maintain that high quality standard while everyone gets trained and learns things and kind of
Got it.
as we go through that transition.
So if we build on that a little bit, and you guys can both kind of answer these next questions. We think of how Cove Architecture really is going to help reduce risk for clients, right? Whether that's missed timelines or budget overruns or even kind of performance gaps. I'd love to talk a little bit more about how we view Cove Architecture as helping mitigate risk.
I think for me, it all comes down to, I guess, the unsexy part of architecture, which is where I like to spend most of my time, which is the timelines, the project management, the calculations, making sure that everything lines up from, kind of a calculation methodology standpoint. And I really think that our ability to be able to harness the power of AI, as an example, the zoning code, the fire code, the ADA, like there's so many different codes to make sure that at no point a drawing can go out that A is not hitting everything, or even as early as schematic design, or is not properly coordinated across the board. That to me is where the quality of design can be elevated while reducing the risk.
No, I have to agree with that.
So let's talk about cost in particular. I mean, that's a critical factor that we know, developers care a lot about. And wanted to talk more about how we think Cove Architecture kind of approaches design with dollars and cents kind of from the beginning and from the start. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we think about is that most of the time we don't know how much things cost. But because we have a really super large database we've built over time from a sustainability consulting perspective, where we've tied the cost, the energy, carbon together, we can actually make pretty reasonable cost estimates. And what that does is allows us to find opportunities that maybe you typically find. So like, for example, we can look at the zoning, we can look at the cost, we can figure out like, what can we build? How much should we build? That can really drive a lot of those discussions around a pro forma that the developer is doing. And that allows us to maybe unlock projects that are currently stalled. So for example, there was a project I was looking at recently that they are trying to hit a certain rate of return on that particular project for this affordable housing. They can't build it because it's at a certain level, but with some AI, we've been able to look and see how can we maximize the yield on that site a little bit more to get it over the finish line and make sure that project can be built, which leads to more housing, which makes it more affordable. And so in that particular location, it's really exciting to kind of see that we can actually use some of this technology to make the world a better place as well.
So I'm glad you brought up AI. So one of the things we did want to talk about was technology and AI and how that kind of plays into the Cove Architecture practice itself. So, the Cove Architecture is built on a foundation of technology, and we're using digital tools and data to kind of change the way we're thinking about design and delivering architecture. Just wanted to talk a little bit more about that, especially about the hype around AI, and how we're thinking about it, and what makes our use of it credible.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of liability problems when it comes to using AI, which most firms, the reason they're not doing stuff is they can't establish what they call responsible control. And so responsible control is like knowing how the information was gathered and making sure that you put your eyes on it. So one of the things that has really changed over the last year is we can actually trace where an answer comes from in an AI tool. And so that traceability of the information has allowed us to actually make this happen, because if you can't do that, you can't use it on a project.
And the only other thing I'll add to that is because we're not using like a chat GPT or what have you, and we've created our own proprietary AI, hooked it up with our simulation engines that we have developed over the last decade or so, we're able to do the precise aspects of architecture that require just pure calculation or pure simulation in the simulation tools or little Python scripts. And then we're able to leverage the AI to pull out direct pieces of information from this vast database that we have created, to make sure that at every point we know that the correct source of information was used. It wasn't just what's broadly available on the web, which that sounds painful.
Right. So obviously there's always a little fear around AI. And we've often been talking about, internally and starting to talk about Cove Architecture. There's always this human side of design that's still going to always be needed, and wanted to kind of talk a little bit more about that, and especially how we think the there's design teams that they just can't be replaced totally by AI. And in particular, what is that human element that we think is so important to continue to merge with or to kind of combine with AI?
Oh yeah, I mean, I really don't like the word replace used alongside AI because nothing could be farther from the truth. It's almost like saying, when back in the day we made calculators or Excel spreadsheets that, oh, you're never going to need people to do finance again because now we have spreadsheets. That's clearly not the case. We can just do so much more, so much better, so much efficiently, so much faster. And that is exactly what I think is kind of what we're talking about here, is instead of spending the time doing mundane tasks like, I don't know, putting in a trash chute or designing the trash chute or detailing it out again and again and again, even though we've done it already for the last 100 projects, let's get that in because we know how to do it. We've got the knowledge around it, and let's actually spend our time on the things we care about, which is why we likely got into architecture, which is design. Let's get more design iterations to elevate the design quality for something that is actually now possible that never was possible before because there's only so many hours that you can build to that particular project.
And love to get some of your perspective. I feel you've been someone who's really championing AI for architecture and have been for a while.
Yeah.
And want to kind of get some of your perspectives on how you view that with our Cove Architecture practice and the addition of always needing the human element.
Yeah. So what you need is intent. So like when any AI system can make pretty much anything, but like if you ask it to make the same thing every single time, of course you get the same thing. But humans provide the difference, the thing that makes it more unique. That's like we bring our own perspectives or judgment, the things that are important to us. And that's what the AI needs to be able to respond to that. So it's an enabler. It's more collaborative. So, like in the back in the day, there used to be this idea that you could generate a building and you have generative design. That's ridiculous because
it sounds so fanciful though.
like more options does not equal,
only if you see some of the designs.
Yeah, that's true. They do seem a little out there.
I mean, one of my mentors once told me that complexity doesn't equal beauty. And so I think like sometimes you need to think about like, okay, I need to make something, but I want to make it beautiful. I have to bring that human element, the human intent, and then I can like have a collaborative design. So what we're doing now is what I would call collaborative design rather than generative design, because we're collaborating around somebody's actual intent, and then we're able to see that intent carried out to the end to maximum fidelity, and we can decide, I like this fully realized building. I want to change these things and fully realize it again. Now I can fully understand how my project works with the site. There's not anything I'm going to be missing because I've given myself the proper time to achieve a high degree of design excellence.
Excellent. Still imagining these crazy buildings that we were, playing with on AI once.
Oh, yeah.
They did not look inhabitable. That's for sure.
No, it did not.
So let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing and kind of where we're going. What can you share about the projects that we've already taken on and even delivered at this point?
Much of the work that we've taken on and we're working on is within the multifamily sector. We're doing a good bit of warehouse manufacturing. We're looking at institutional work as well. So there's a lot of varied projects that we're spending our time on. Truly, as we think about the work, it's a lot more about the buildings that are going to impact the lives of people that inhabit it within the built environment. So it really is more dictated by, what the market needs at the moment.
Yeah, and I think like to kind of build on that though, I think one of the things that's been really, really interesting is how much things that are more elevated design have come our way once we launched this. I think like a lot of developers who want to, spend, $500-$600 a square foot on some for sale product, it's maybe $1,200 a square foot sold. Those types of projects need a lot of data information because it's so the economic consequences of making the wrong choice. The stakes get higher when the projects get bigger.
Right. So going back to our cost conversation we just had.
So somehow I feel like I've also been pleasantly surprised to see how much high-end projects are looking at this type of technology to enable them to get built. And so it's not just like the small, things. It's like actually like really substantial projects that are going to be, I think, pretty signature things that I hope we can show soon.
Right.
Once those things become, a little bit more financed.
So what kinds of projects are we excited about taking on? You kind of touched on that a little bit, but I'd like to expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah. One that I'm really excited about, some tower projects we've been working on. Those are things that those projects that really make a big impact on the skyline and kind of like set yourself apart as a true design shop. I think high design work seems to be the thing that a lot of principals that are joining us are also bringing. So they're bringing their portfolios. And I think like creating that circle of excellence of these different people that have those things and creating that really exciting culture, right? We're building the future is something that I'm just really excited to be a part of.
Excellent. So let's talk about the broader vision a little bit. Sandeep, how do you think that Cove Architecture fits in with kind of Cove, our parent company's brand and mission?
I think from a brand standpoint, again, it very much goes back to that technology thread of automation, of AI, because Cove, in pretty much everything that we do, uses AI, uses technology, uses simulation engines, and we help our teams be better at deliver the best version of work that could be delivered by leveraging that. And this is no different, whether it's sustainability, whether it's architecture, whether it's something else that we're working on. It's all tied to that same thread. And I do think that it all comes back to our core values of the business that are most definitely aligned across the board, which is be kind, be honest, and use data. There's nothing about this new arm of the business that will deviate from that.
Yeah, I'm just most excited to see give ourselves the ability to affect more buildings, to create more of a carbon impact and reduce those carbon emissions across projects. I've been trying so long to figure out how do we create that big broad-based change, and I think being able to kind of participate in doing that on a multi angle, whether that's us as architects or as consultants, or maybe we're consulting architects teaming up with different people, whatever it happens to be.
Right.
I know there's several firms that have reached out in the last couple of months or so. They're really excited to actually bring us on as sustainable architects, or we're hiring them as architects of record. So I think that's just a cool new angle for collaboration.
Kind of partnership and collaboration opportunities.
Yeah.
So Patrick, what do you hope Cove Architecture will mean to the next generation of architects?
I think we're definitely having that early, moon landing moment. I think people will look back to this year as the year that architecture dramatically changed. Just I don't know, maybe it's a little too ambitious, but I would say if we look back to some of the stuff happening in early modernism in the 1920s, we can kind of look to the same level of change coming from a technological perspective, from an ideology perspective, from even a philosophical direction of how architecture theory is composed and put together. I really think that this time will be looked back on as something that was just as transformative. So
I couldn't agree more. And honestly, when you say it might be too ambitious, I'm like, anything less ambitious, is it even worth doing?
Let's be ambitious. Let's go bold. So what do we think clients are really looking for in an architecture partner today? And how do we, plan to deliver that?
I think some of the things that we've heard and folks that we've been partnering with, it really comes down to that relationship piece. And I translate relationship in a few different ways. One, of course, the ability to hold your word. If we say that we're going to deliver something in a set amount of time, to actually honor what we said, whether in words and paper and writing, whatever, to do what we say we're going to do. To be able to deliver a building that is on budget. That's harder than it sounds, but to actually be able to do that.
Right.
And the insights that we have is definitely something that I've seen developers be extremely excited about. And just use a lot of data to drive our decisions. I don't think that what the market needs is too different from even what our core values are. Just a great partner who does what they say they're going to do and leverages a lot of data and insight to do it versus guesswork.
Awesome. Well, let's take a couple questions from the chat, and thank you to everyone who's submitted some of the questions from there. So we'll just take a minute and grab one or two. Okay. Let's talk about, let's see. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the tech from our previous work and how that's really integrated into Cove Architecture. We touched a little bit on the simulation engine, a little bit on AI. Just want to, dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah.
For folks who may have known us, for many years and maybe have used our software, used our consulting services, and now, we've got the continuation within our technology.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. So the thing that's really cool is we have a full software team that's been building stuff all along.
Yep.
And now, because they're also using AI in their development process, they're able to build tools at the speed at which we discover things. And so they're able to connect to our, so we use they built this thing called Vitros, which is like our AI engine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's able to look to different codes and standards and kind of form an opinion and give us a really interesting and very complete answer. But I think that tech pulls a lot from our deep knowledge of having to build difficult simulation tools. There probably isn't a challenge too difficult that we haven't attempted in the last 7 years in terms of coding. And it's just kind of gratifying to see all that deep expertise and knowledge base. Our software team has been very stable and very hardworking for the last, all these years. And it's just really nice to see that culture of excellence. And coding also being there to help us in this new era of AI-based coding. They've also embraced that as well. It's a hard thing to find sometimes when someone embraces that. So if people are asking what it's going to look like for architects, we've also seen what it's like for software engineers, which are the canary in the coal mine for how you're going to leverage technology. And we haven't let any of those kids go. They're doing a great job. But they're just doing more things, and they're doing it more completely with fewer errors. Just their quality control is off the charts.
Excellent. So how are you thinking about building the team at Cove Architecture?
I think we're definitely focused, again, from an AI-powered, human-centered approach. We're definitely partnering with a lot of leaders within the space, whether it be, principals, project architects, project managers, junior designers. We're keeping busy with the number of people we're talking to on a daily basis to kind of build that dream team. So that search is continuing to stay on. We're talking to a lot of really, really awesome people. And again, for anyone listening, if you're interested, definitely apply.
Yeah, come work with us. We're hiring A players to be
and
sure.
be part of something audacious.
So.
And then I think this is a little bit interesting question. What advice would you give to architects entering the field today?
That's a really good point. I think I really look at SciArc and the program there with Casey Wren and how they're kind of building the way that their students are coming out of that program. And just a big shout out to them. Basically, people coming from there are really well built for the kinds of things that I need help with now.
Which is the future of architecture.
Yeah, designing how we design is something that I would be focused on.
Cool. Okay, so before we wrap, one sentence from each one of you. What's the one thing you want people to remember about Cove Architecture?
I would say great design and still go home on time.
That almost rhymes.
Oh man, I think if
I did not plan it. I did not plan it. But when I
That's
said it out loud, I was like, oh, huh.
good for you.
I think
Try and top that, Patrick.
yeah, I would say what I want people to think about, or the big takeaway is that it's happening. We're doing it.
Yep.
AI architecture firm, it's real. And I think a lot of people said it was going to happen. Now it's actually happening. And I think while that causes a little bit of oh my God.
Right.
But I think at the same time, it's also really exciting too. So I think it's real is my big takeaway.
Well, great. Thank you guys so much for sharing your insights. And thank you so much for everyone for joining us today. If you're curious about working with us, exploring open roles that we have, or just staying in the loop as we grow, feel free to head to our Cove tool, our Cove.inc website, or follow us on LinkedIn. We are just getting started and we'd love to stay connected.
Amazing. Thank you, Krystl.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Talk to you later.